Kia. E horo te marunu kia whakapapu pounamu te moana, hei hoa rahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Just for the avoidance of doubt, we have, I think there's some foldback in the sound system here, but just for the avoidance of doubt for today's briefing, we have Deputy Mayor Anna Curnow is here. We have Councillor David Wills, Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins, Councillor Victoria Delavaris-Woodcock, and Councillor Mark Vincent. We have 3 apologies. They are from Councillor Karen Joyce Paki, Councillor Peter Weddy, and Councillor Jonathan Larson. So just so everyone is fully aware of who's here in the room, because we're all sitting here with masks on. Thank you for everyone for attendance. We also have a public gallery today, so kia ora, and thank you for being here, present in the room with us. So it's very significant. We have a couple of items on this morning's council briefing, and the first of these we're going to go to right now, which is regarding the annual plan 2022-2023, which is for the period, of course, that starts on the 1st of July, just a couple of months away. So to present this item, we have our General Manager of Strategic Investment, Davidson, who's going to lead this item, along with Michaela Boric, who is very much linked with preparing the document, the annual plan that we receive. Annual plan, again, for everyone's edification, the annual plan, if you like, is I'm going to say it's year 2 of our LT that we are headed into here. So what we're about to see is a revision, if you like, a shifting of the direction as we are responding to the conditions of the world that we're in for year 2 of the long-term plan of Kaipara District Council. So I'm going to hand over to Michaela and Sue now to lead this presentation. Morena korua.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just there, okay. There, okay. Back. Okay, so the annual plan, you've heard Graham Coleman, who is responsible for the financials. He's presented this to you a number of times, but he's had to take special leave. So I'm here picking up and hopefully be able to answer the questions. So basically, the last time we talked, I think we put out to the community in our long-term plan that rates were going to rise 7.13%. And we thought initially that was still going to be 7.13% because there were some things that council wanted to change to the second year of the LTP. And there were some things that because of time, staff have had to change as well. So, but the pleasing, we've come to what I think is council should be pleased with, which is basically in the draft, it was 7.13%. We've identified savings and so that's meant that we're looking at a rates increase of 4.86%. For water by metre, the draft that we put out said 17.7% increase. It's a huge increase for people, and we understand that. Unfortunately, even though we've looked at it, all the costs are from either the new Tamata ROI company that's formed for regulation, or from our operations contract. So, but we have been able to get some savings, and it's now proposed to be 14.16%, which will still be difficult for our ratepayers to afford. So the key things, just to revise, go through the key costs that that make up this plan. is that we're bringing forward, well, there's $1 million worth of costs relating to the district plan, because council wants to have the draft out and go through a consultation process and have a district plan in place before any changes to the RMA Act, which is a sensible proposal. So that we've got $1 million of extra costs there. Library seating Dargaville, we have got 250,000. That's was put in because we were proposing to have a trust to fund a library in Dargaville on this site. And so starting next year, we were to look at how the trust would be formed, set up, and responsibilities and how they would go about. We also brought a scanning project forward because of the fact that we're moving from one building to the new building across the street. There's a number of documents that actually need to be scanned, and so there's 100,000 in for that. Contract renewals, we had nearly 800,000, and that was because we had three of our most major contracts being renewed, which is our water, waters, parks and reserves, and also solid waste. We also had staffing increases. We've still got a high value of capital projects this year, but also just the increases in building consents and resource consents. And putting the money in there doesn't necessarily mean we can get the staff, but that's the first point. We need to have we need extra staff if we even want to attempt to keep meeting the regulatory timetables. But changes for employees. Know that for the past 2 years, as we described to staff, the first year when COVID struck, we didn't give any increases to our staff at all. In the second year, we a very small increase, and the proposal this year was to give a small increase, but we're losing our turnover is 27%. So it's 27% and some more money there for to hold on to the staff that we've got and attract new staff. And so you can see that's the key costs that we're having to cover. So our proposal to meet those costs is the savings that we've identified is we have got some savings that have come through once we've negotiated contracts, 150,000. We've got, because some of the projects have taken a bit longer, and we can see that even next year we're not going to use the money we've got. We're actually earning interest, which we've never done before. So we've got monies on deposit, and so we're saying there's another 200,000 of interest earned. Interest expenses, we're not paying the interest that we thought. Those forward exchange contracts that we've got are out now good. Now that the interest is increasing, we can actually react with joy that we're actually taking savings on some of those contracts. So I think that will be 150,000 less there. We've gone really carefully through the budgets, and we found that a lot of the costs that we had 2 years ago staff aren't travelling as much. A lot more training has been done online, and also stationery is not being used. Some of the other costs. So we see that as an ongoing cost that we can reduce. We also see that the waste minimisation, we're deferring that. We haven't worked out what the new model is going to be. It's still got to be presented to council. So that's been deferred till, I think, October 2023. And what we've also found is this year, because of the huge turnover that we've got at council, the employee, we've actually saved on vacancy savings this year. So we're saying, look, we can put that towards next year's rates rather than reduce debt. And library seating for Dargaville, we're saying, okay, that was in this year, and the next discussion you're going to have is on the better off package. But should that be available, should council decide it wants to avail itself of the proposal from government and potentially be a library, then there's 250,000 of savings there. That's the end of my slideshow. So if there's two parts to this, the finances and then there's the written part itself. So I'll take initially some questions on the finance part.
Thank you, Sue. That's very clear. Councillor Curnow, questions?
Thank you, Sue. It is clear and it is a good result for this year. It's a good result. Just a little bit worried about next year, the 23-24 year. The targeted rates increase is 30% that we're projecting, which is quite eye-watering. Can I just understand a bit better what's driving that 30% increase in that year?
So so what we did have before is we were going from a 7% increase, which is a much higher base, to a 4% increase. Obviously, if you lower the base now and then the percentage goes up. So, and part of it is because we've got probably 3% of so 3.9% was already there. That was already the increase that was proposed. And I don't know the key, and I apologise for this. We're still trying to recruit an accountant. Got one on special leave, one on sick leave one on for the 2 weeks. So I haven't been able to get the information that I need, but 3% of it will be to do with the new waste that
That's in the general rate. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that is
it. This comes in under targeted rates or general rates.
I'm not sure where Graham has put it next year. So what we can do is when we come back to with in council, we can talk to you about that. But generally, it's because you've actually lowered the base the first year, so obviously the difference is greater, and so the percentages.
That principle, I'm just sort of concerned that if we go with this year, then next year we've created an even bigger problem than we had this year. So
I suppose what we're trying to do is try and make it as affordable as possible. We don't know what the economy is going to be like next year, but we know it's really bad this year. And just as we reacted 2 years ago and I don't think we had any rates increases going out at that stage. You know, council made decisions based on that. So
I'm certainly not questioning the work you've done on this year. I think that's great that we've got it down to there. However, it feels a little bit like the price of getting it down there is that next year is going to be, we're projecting 9.95% on this.
Yeah, so I'll just clarify, because it does include the targeted rates.
Yes.
You can see that it's both annual and targeted, so it will include the waste. The big thing about the waste is although it might be an extra 3% onto your rates, you actually aren't having to pay. It's actually cheaper each week. You're not having to pay for the blue and yellow bags. You've got to take that into consideration.
It's out of the rates excluding water by metre. So the targeted rates, which is the row above, is that all about water? So that's where you get your 30% increase in your targeted rate.
So the target.
Sorry, we're on page 4 of the report. It's called, and the section is impact on financial year 2024 at the bottom of the page. And it's the blue column on the right-hand side and the very right-hand number 2 items up from the bottom, which is a 30.1% increase indicated for the targeted rate next year.
So just to clarify for you, that targeted rates is not water, it is sewage, it'll be stormwater, and it'll be solid waste. So a big part of that will be the solid waste, because I can see the difference is 3 million, and that's probably about what we estimated for the solid waste. I think there's ways to justify that if people can understand they're not paying for the yellow bag and the blue bag.
All right, so that'll be a story that we'll need to tell very clearly.
That's for the next year.
Yeah. But probably good to start talking about that this year as well, so that people understand that cost is coming, but that it's offset by the reduction in bag expenses.
So we are trying to increase the service level while we're trying to lower the cost of living. for people.
That's right, and you've also
Yes.
got to recall, when you're talking about next year, there is the potential that we may have an LTP amendment because we're looking at water for Dargaville, increasing storage. We're looking at the Mangawhai wastewater system and potentially more costs there. So if those are brought in, that will affect next year as well. So
We'll cross next year as we come to it, but there's an indication here. And of course, it shows as well just how significant that solid waste project is regarding, and you're coming off a very low base for those targeted rates. That one giant project suddenly changes those numbers enormously. It looks very scary, but it may not be so scary after all. Councillor De La Villiers-Wilcock.
Mr Mayor, so my question follows on from Councillor Curno's question and unravelling this item of the targeted rate for waste minimisation. If the improved operations services is not being introduced until year end 2023, why would we be taking targeted rates for waste from 1st of July 2023? Wouldn't we?
because that's how rates work, you average it over so many months. You don't start changing your rate. You have to set your rates for the year.
Right.
You don't set the rates twice a year. Or, we'd set it for the year.
So
it'd be less. So you still have the $3 million.
right.
So for a person who owns a house, yes, we could take that $3 million and then put it over 3/4 of the year, but that makes it more of a burden for people to afford.
Yes.
So what we'll do is and how rates normally works is you take the whole $3 million and take it over the year. The following year, there'll be an increase, obviously, as well, because that $3 million will have turned into $3.5 million because of the extra quarter of the year.
So from looking at the table that we're addressing, reducing the rates this financial year to come to 4.86 is not actually a precursor to the 9.95% rates rise in the 24 year. I mean, the 9.9% rate rise is inevitable. Is that what you're saying?
That's our best estimate at the moment.
Okay.
Obviously, when we look at it next year, there may be, as I said, there may be extra costs coming in.
Yes.
Council will look at.
Yes, it's clear from the agenda that these are provisional figures, so I get that. Now, if through the chair, I would like to ask some detailed questions about, so I would like not to be interrupted while I follow through with the number of questions I have, as Mr Mayor.
So these, well, I mean, I'll be chairing the meeting here, but we'll just take one question at a time.
Yes.
How many questions do you have, Councillor De La Villiers?
I'm not quite sure, but I have a number.
And they're all related to the annual plan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
So, with the three waters, so you've mentioned that the rates rise is coming from an increase of the three major contracts, and one of them being three waters. And I understand.
Just to correct you there, sorry. It's not because of three waters of the legislation, it's Taumata Arawai regulatory body.
plus 100,000 or something. Taumata Arawai. So that's the new water regulator.
Our three waters contract, though, maintenance and operation has also
That's also, yes.
gone up over and above what was planned for in the LTP.
Yes, it has.
Right. And this is an important question. Has Whangarei District Council also planning to put up their water rates?
My understanding, as I heard through the media, so I haven't looked at their annual plan, was 30%.
Right. So is it?
Sorry, Sue, so 30%?
Yes.
Water rates.
Unless anyone else has heard.
That's what you've read in the media for Whangarei because of Taumata Arawai and shutting down Parker
Yeah.
And the Marsden Point, yeah,
No, okay, so
so that's why
is it
theirs
correct
is going up.
that the same contractor is delivering and will deliver the Three Waters Maintenance and Operations contract for Whangarei and Kaipara District Council?
That's correct. Yes, although Whangarei's contract comes up for renewal and they'll be discussing that, but they've had an initial briefing on it. My understanding is it's likely that they will accept that.
Now, I have heard it that they've got an in-house contractor. Can you please name that contractor?
Sorry, that's not to do with, I don't know, Whangarei District Council's operations.
This relates to the Section 17A decision where we chose to coordinate our Three Waters maintenance and operation contract with Whangarei District Council. Can you please name the contractor that has won the contract for Kaipara and Whangarei?
Well, I know what it is for Kaipara because you approved it. So that was
Can you please name it?
Downer. Yeah, Downer. They've been awarded the contract.
Your worship, can I just interrupt here for 2 seconds? I believe that was a PEX decision.
Yes, but it's been awarded.
Okay, it has been awarded now, so I just want to check that it's up in the public.
So the decision that we are speaking to here was decided by Kaipara District Council in a public excluded meeting because it was still before negotiations.
That's right.
Yes, and so the update to that right now, Sue, is that the contract has been awarded
Yeah, and it's been signed.
and has been signed. So that's clear, but I would also say, councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, I'd say we have, and our officers have no ability to comment at all about what is happening in another council.
Mr. Mayor, that is not true because our 17A agreement, we worked to coordinate a joint in-house contract with Whangarei District Council. And now they've put their water rates up by 30% and we're putting our rates up by 17% or possibly 14%. And the common denominator is the contractor Downer. Is that right?
No, no, sorry, we're all going to chorus no.
No.
No, councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, I don't know what's going on in your imagination here, but.
Okay, so what is the contractor for Whangarei District Council?
So the important thing is this, that the water increase for Whangarei is because Marsden Point refinery has been closed down. That is the largest single contributing factor to Whangarei District Council's significant targeted water rates increase. Is because Marsden Point oil refinery has been shut down.
Okay.
All right, so.
I'd like.
So the points about who may be the contractor or what is going on are entirely in the margins about the marginal differences we're talking about here, because the biggest fish is that Marsden Point has been closed down, and that's significant for Whangarei District Council. So we are not privy to that decision about Whangarei District Council, all of the information that they have on that. Our officers are not privy to that. And I think it would be unfair of you to be expecting our staff to respond to the work of another council in that way. They can respond in the space where there's joined up work, but in the space where there's not joined up work, that's just not realistic at all.
Mr. Mayor, I have been investigating this matter, and the answer I have from Mr. Maris is that there is an indubitable and unequivocal connection between our water services operations maintenance contract and that of Whangarei, because under the Section 17A, Section 17 chose to collaborate with them. So
Yes.
I am trying to understand and make a connection, and I understand that the staff are unable to answer all my specific questions, and I will go and do some more work now that I know that you cannot give me the full answers that I'm requiring. Can I now ask my next question?
Certainly.
So why are we putting these three waters maintenance and operations contracts and prices up for our ratepayers when in July 24, if the legislation goes ahead, the government are going to take all of our assets off us and make it entity A?
So that's up to you. If you want to make the rates cheaper, you can, but we won't be recovering all of our rates, and it means a loss and means we deplete the rest of our cash.
So
it wouldn't be a sensible business decision.
but wouldn't it be a sensible business decision? Because if we do the minimum that we have to keep our levels of service and our compliance, then we are saving this district money because we are losing our assets and the business is taken off us.
So, excuse me, don't even bother answering this question. The Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, there's a very interesting political question. It's actually a political question for a debate, not a question for clarification regarding the staff. We all know that the government's three waters reforms are not even in the form of being a bill before Parliament. At any moment in time, central government may say, actually, we don't like any of it anymore. We're going to leave it all as business as usual. Please carry on, councils, doing exactly what you have always been doing. They may yet decide to do that. And the important thing for us and our officers is that our officers have to provide continuity and being the trusting and trustworthy council that we are seeking to be. So they can't be saying, oh, we're not going to do anything at all here, because that would just be incredibly reckless and irresponsible. So we can't get into those sorts of will we, won't we, would they, wouldn't they, sorts of questions. All right, thank you. Your next question, please, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Okay, my next question is, it's relating to regulatory, and when do we propose to review the development contributions policy and the price that developers are paying?
So when we do some changes to our capital, so at the moment, staff have in mind that there is going to be there's likely, I should say, to be an amendment for not this year coming, obviously, because we're about to adopt the annual plan, but for the following year. And if we're going to do changes to Dargaville water and Mangawhai wastewater, then that would mean that we would change the development contributions at that time.
Thank you. If we now turn our attention to agenda page 2, and we have a briefing, April briefing changes at the top of the page, employee benefit changes. So from, I understand 1.155 million is saved because of staff vacancies and not refilling those positions. Is that correct?
No, that's the extra cost that we're saying we need to fund changes to our employees. The savings from this year are going to be at least 500,000, likely to be more.
Okay, so for the reasons for the 7.13% increase was that employee benefits changes, there's two amounts. Would that be relating to bonuses and wage increase for the staff?
Not bonuses, but certainly wage increases, salary increases.
So
as I said, the turnover rate is 27%.
Of our staff?
Yes, we're getting one a week at the moment.
Sorry, one resignation a week. So the turnover of the staff produces these lines.
That's why we've got some savings this year.
Yep.
We're finding it difficult, as all businesses are, to.
Okay, so I understand that they've budgeted to achieve the 4.86% rates proposed decrease. Have you removed that 1 million 155,000, are you still intending to increase the salary?
Offset
Sorry.
500,000.
Offset
Yes, we're reducing it by 500,000 because of the vacancies.
because of the vacancies. So the existing staff will get a pay increase.
So through the chair, as we discussed at the last briefing, I'm waiting on the strategic pays assessment. But based on what we're seeing in the market, then yes, I would expect that to be the case, but I can't answer that question currently because we don't have the data.
Right. So
If I could just interject for a moment, just expand on that a little, perhaps it would be helpful to explain about that process involving strategic pay. Like it's not just staff lining up to line their own pockets, so to speak.
So through the chair, happy to do that. Obviously, we did have a separate briefing paper on that. But ultimately, yes, so strategic pay do the pay review for most councils. It's set within it, so it's about testing the market and it's ensuring that we have pay parity with other councils.
So Dargaville Library Trust seed funding. The word seed funding, is that a euphemism for consultant's report?
And it's
Sorry,
so through the chair, this was something that was in, so Sue's removed that. That's where we're making some savings.
Yes, but I would like to know, what did you mean by, say, you putting $250,000 for something called seed funding? What exactly was that? What does that mean?
Okay, so through the chair, that was obviously that is in our LTP, that's in our plans, and it was because we were looking at new sites for the library. So as you know, the discussion around the Dargaville Library has been going on many years, and so that money had been put aside for us to be able to take the opportunity should an opportunity arise in terms of moving the library, because it's too small, hence why we had the library strategy last week.
So you're saying that the money could be used to lease a premises?
It was just sitting in the budget to be determined. So that's what went through in terms of our LTP. And that, because of the conversations we're having subsequently and later on today around what we do with the better off package, if we choose to accept that, then in order to us to bring down rates, this was one of the items that we felt we could offer up because we believe there are other alternatives. So it's removing that line that's currently in the budget.
Which could have been spent on a consultant's report, correct?
That was not allocated to any particular work.
Okay, thank you. Now, my other question about the library is the Mangawhai Library, how is that to be funded? Because that's staying in, is that, yeah.
So I would then look at that depending on what decision you make for the better off package. At the moment, both libraries are in our long-term plan, which is good news. But they're to be funded. So the Mangawhai Library, from memory, I haven't got an LTP in front of me, was partly by debt, partly by development contributions.
So you're saying that the Mangawhai Library, we're taking the Dargaville Library off the books if we remove the seed $250,000 to keep the rates low, but the Mangawhai Library still stays in and general rates pay for that?
Both would be.
no,
No,
sorry, we're all just going no.
Okay, so I asked the question, how is it to be funded? And I haven't got a direct answer.
Sorry, councillor De Oliveira-Wilcox, I've got a question for you. Where on page 2 does it say Mangawhai Library?
I'm not looking at page 2. I've got.
So where in this report regarding the annual plan does it say Mangawhai Library? Because I would say that your questions are relevant because it's irrelevant to the subject of what we're talking about.
I am concerned that if we are striking off the ability for Dargaville to have an improved library.
Sorry,
I would just like to ask how much, is it 100% development contributions?
Sorry, can I just say the subject here is about the annual plan. We've also got a real tension here today, which is that the very next discussion we're going to be having on the next agenda item will include a discussion about Dargaville Library.
Point of,
And-
Mr Mayor, that is not related to the matter at hand.
Sorry, no. So I'm just clarifying to you. Thank you. Your point of order is clear, okay, and your point of order is rejected, okay, because my first question to you is where in this item, you can't be hypocritical, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, where in this item does it say Mangawhai Library? Please point to that regarding this annual plan. Where does it say this?
Mangawhai Library. Okay, so it says, it's not, I put in a search and it's not specifically here.
So it's not here, thank you.
No, but the Dargaville Library
Sorry, no.
is,
No,
so
but
I
my
need,
question, sorry. So my question, okay, to you was about the irrelevance, okay, of you raising Mangawhai Library right here and right now, okay, and wasting the officer's time when we're about to have a discussion about that in a different agenda item. All right, please don't be confused here. So for the year that we're talking about, we have a simple question which the Chief Executive has responded to regarding why the officers believe that they can make a rates saving for the year ahead, all right, regarding Dargaville Libraries.
okay, I am right. It says we are also committed to developing a new library facility in Mangawhai, and that is on page 22 of this agenda item, Mr Mayor. Can you please withdraw your, apologise to me?
So it's in the annual plan, but not in this discussion item, the 3-page item that we're dealing with.
Excuse me, the item of the agenda and all the papers that support it, I have found my reference to Mangawhai Library and...
Sorry, I'm going to intervene.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor.
I'm going to intervene. Showing respect for the staff next to me who are becoming very uncomfortable at this carrying on. Can we please tone this down and be respectful in the way we speak to each other? I'm sorry to intrude, but I'm actually feeling the nerves of the people next to me who are staff members. Please.
Thank you, Councillor. Sue Davidson, back to you.
To clarify, just for you. So we're proposing to take out you've asked us to find ways of saving money. This is 250,000, nearly 0.75%. What it means is that, yes, we've got another subject coming where you can make the decision on whether we accept the better off package or not. If you don't, then the options for you are still to keep out the 250,000 and we can put it in the year after or the year after that. So it's not to take away the Dargaville Library and the Mangawhai Library. All we've got in at the moment is money which is to be funded, I think, by development contributions to design the library. You know, in the first year,
Okay, so what I would like to emphasise here is that we must not be linking the two agenda items. We are discussing the rates rise proposal in this item. The next item is the better off package. It is incorrect procedure and not democratic to link the two items. So can we please stop talking about the better off package? And please, Mr Mayor, can you apologise for telling me I'm confused? Because I'm not. Here it is.
Okay, so thank you, De Lavaris Woodcock.
Thank you, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
As far as I'm concerned, the most important thing here, okay, is that the item of Mangawhai Library you brought into this discussion, and the whole discussion that we're about to be having next with the next item you introduced here, okay, and the confusion here is caused by you, okay, so because you have dragged that next agenda item into this agenda.
No, I have not, Mr
Yes,
Mayor.
you have.
On
Sorry,
page 20,
sorry, yes,
point
you have.
of order, Mr Mayor, on page,
What is your point of order, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock?
that on page 22 of this agenda item, in the annual plan, which we have to discuss because we are about to adopt it in the next council meeting so that it comes into enforcement and it reflects and affects our rates and how much people are going to pay for their rates increase. And it is important as a councillor that I ask the difficult questions, and here in the report, it states that we are committed to developing a new library facility in Mangawhai. So I have asked how that will be funded, and our finance officer is not clear and not able to say it. So on the one hand, today we are.
Sorry, look, councillor Delavaris Woodcock, you're like,
Just through the chair.
councillor Vincent's just left the meeting in frustration with you.
So-
And Chief Executive,
So
please.
through the chair, just obviously to enable us to move on. So I don't know whether this will answer your question, councillor Delavaris Woodcock. We can always follow up afterwards if you feel that it's not been answered. In terms of the seed fund, that's coming out, so that hopefully you have some reassurance. And again, this is just a briefing, so the decision has not been made. In terms of the Mangawhai Library, I think Sue has already mentioned that the plan was for it to be via development contributions. That was something obviously we consulted in the LTP as well, and we asked our community around that. So that's where this lies, and this just, as I say, at this stage, there's no determination. This is just explaining how we've been able to drive down the rates cost, which you've asked us to do, by finding lines in the budget that we feel we can offer up to make that reduction in rates. So I hope that's answered your question. If there's specifics, it may be we're not able to answer that in this meeting. So if you want to email them to me or to Jason, we'll make sure you get the answer in advance of any decision of council.
Thank you, Chief Executive.
Thank you. Are we at the end of your list of questions, councillor Delavaris Woodcock? Yes, lovely, thank you. Are there any other questions for clarification?
I had some,
Councillor Curnow.
that's okay, Mayor. On page 15,
That's the annual plan report.
are you happy with?
Yes, you can go on to the finance, that's fine.
Okay. So on page 15, it's just, some of my questions are more about just suggestions for how we might just improve. So the first bullet point talks about the waste minimisation strategy, and it says that we approved the first phase of the minimisation strategy, but doesn't say what that is. So would it be possible just to add just a couple of things about which includes, because, yeah, it doesn't, on the one hand, we're saying we're moving the money to the next year, but on the other hand, we're saying with the first phase is already happening, so.
Incorporate that. Sure.
And then page 19. In the first paragraph, again, it's just that assumption that people have read and understand. So this says, the second sentence, this is a slightly higher than what was expected in the long-term plan. Maybe we can just say which is, just again, not making that assumption that people understand. And then the bottom paragraph is a sort of separation between, the way it reads is that some of the work is necessary and some of it's optional, and parks have found themselves on the optional side of that line in the way that that last paragraph reads. A small part of our budget, such as the grants we provide or the parks we manage.
Is that still under financial management?
That's under what are you getting?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Financial management.
Getting. I just wonder whether parks should be part of more of the essential services that we provide.
Okay.
And then on the next page, page 20, we've got all those line items on the key projects. And again, it's a question of, I think we know what they mean, but I don't know that the community knows what they mean. So I think, for example, structures, component replacements. In fact, to be fair, not even I am terribly clear what that means. So that could just be fleshed out a little. I know that that comes straight from the accounting system, so I'm cool with that. Under Kaihu Valley Trail, this is actually a question. Does that include the kind of marketing community development that's sort of taking it beyond the actual building? Is there funding for that? I can't remember whether that, because we did discuss that early on, and I can't remember whether that stayed in or dropped out.
I'm not sure if that's in, I know it's high on our agenda to bring them, but I'm not sure that it's actually part of this. I think that's just the construction and design of the project.
But could somebody at some point just find out, do we still have money in the budget for that soft side?
Through your worship, so that was reduced and removed earlier on by council.
Okay, so question for my colleagues, would we be happy to put that back in or a budget back in for that? The reason I say that is because, as you know, we have some challenges around certain sections and the engagement. And I just wonder whether it would be useful to have a little bit of that kind of more soft side funding to assist with that part of the project. So, am I permitted to ask my colleagues that at this point?
Well, a council decision was made, as Mr Maris says, and this was back at the, I'm going to say the December council meeting, to slash the rates then, and that took all of that work out. And so that was the view of the council, was that it didn't want that work to be being done.
So through the chair, obviously, if you want, we're following that council decision, and if you put something back in, it will impact the bottom line on the race.
I understand, but the staff have done a marvellous job of bringing it down, and I'm just wondering whether that might be something we could rediscuss.
So there is
And I guess
there's a challenge about the
Yeah.
process on that, and today, and the timing, and the fact that not all of the council is here to be engaged in a discussion when all of the council voted for the rates for those projects to be cut. So it's challenging here today
Yeah, that's
from a process perspective,
disappointing. I guess.
but back onto the agenda, if you like.
Yeah. Would there be an opportunity for us to reconsider that at the adoption meeting, or is it complete?
through the chair, well, no, because then obviously it's going to impact on the rates, and we won't have a chance to do the modelling, and ideally the paper would need to be adopted at the same time.
And there's an audit process that needs to happen before then as well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, and then, so that answers my next question, was about footpaths as well. We're only doing 200,000, but I think that comes from Wakakatahi, doesn't it? That limit.
That's right, it's what they'll subsidise.
That's the only, yeah, okay, cool. And then just a technical question on page 30 around depreciation. The figures on wastewater and water supply have both gone down from the annual report figures. Why is that? Why are we, I mean, because we haven't loaded any of our assets, so how come that's dropped?
I think our annual plan, we're looking at, because I think we've made to our annual plan for the structure we've got there, we've made very little changes to the capital expenditure. We've only added a few. We haven't made that much of a change to what we've had in there. So yes, you're right, there is a bit of a lag.
Yeah. So is that going to change, or is that what it is?
It's what it is, and until we get a new fixed asset system, which is what we've got budgeted for.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Sue and Michaela. This is an amazing piece of work and exceeded my expectations, to be honest, so thank you. I do have a question for clarification, and I risk saying Dartmoor Library. On your presentation, that 250 was shown on both sides. So I just want to check the 4.86%, is that out? So
yes, so all I was showing is, so to get to the 7.13, the 250 was one of the big line items of costs, and that we were proposing to take it out to make the savings.
Great, I just wanted to check that. I got a bit confused myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor De La Varus-Woodcock, more questions?
Yes, I have two.
Okay, thank you, because I did ask you before and you didn't have them, so you have them now.
Mr. Mayor, I have them now, yes.
Okay, thank you.
My question is directed to the agenda page 26, and we have a surplus of 23,641,000 in the final column, annual plan. Could you explain what that surplus is? That unspent capital projects? Is that?
No, what it is money coming in from subsidies that funds capital projects, but because of accounting rules, has to be shown through the operations. So it doesn't get linked to the capital projects.
Okay, so money coming in through accounting rules has to be shown in operations.
Yes, because it's income coming in, but we're getting it to pay for capital projects. So obviously at the bottom of your P&L, you've got a surplus, but you need that money to pay for the capital projects that are linked to the subsidies you've just taken into account.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Councillor De La Varus-Woodcock.
How is that related to retained earnings? Is it similar? Same?
No, retained earnings is what money, what profits we've made in the past that have basically added to the amount of equity we've got in the council.
So activity income.
Yeah, each year it gets added, yeah.
Okay, so my final question, and this is important.
Third question, sorry, I thought you said two.
Final question is about the learnings, so what has happened is there's been a significant amount of work that you staff have done, and I credit you with that. And you listened to the council and heard the strong message that the community can't afford a 7.13% rates rise. What efficiencies in staffing or wherever across the business of council can we carry forward to the next financial year? Is there normal is a sufficient drop in staffing numbers, but we are still delivering our services? Is this an efficiency that we can continue to carry forward?
No, there's an efficiency of 440,000 in staff support costs.
So
that we're saying is ongoing, yes.
But in terms of the staffing, our chief executive, my question is more directed to the chief executive and she's not here.
So you can.
So is it possible, in order to reset our council to be more efficient, that we continue to deliver the same levels of service with the reduced staff, with the vacancies that we have?
No, I don't think so. What's happened with that, we have got a reduced level of service because we haven't been able to complete our projects on the time that we thought. I mean, we thought because of the fact we haven't got enough project managers. You haven't seen it yet in resource consents and building consents because we've pulled out people that are we've got managers doing building consents, consenting. We're trying everything, but it's not long-term sustainable. So
but we do.
You're working two jobs. It's not sustainable. So there.
Through the chair, we're obviously doing everything we can to recruit, but there's just a huge gap in the market. And as Sue said, Sue's doing two roles. I'm doing two roles. Jason's doing two roles.
Do you intend to still keep the number of comms people?
So at this stage, I don't believe we've got any change of that. We've got one role that's resigned, that's externally funded. I don't know, Jason may have a view.
Your worship, so we have a fixed term role that you know about, councillors, as well. So that finishes at the end of the externally funded project committee. But yes, we do intend on keeping the staff that we have.
Providing through the chair, we can keep them.
Yeah.
At 27% turnover.
So thank you. So I think, Sue, I think we're at the end of this item. You've received sufficient direction from us. Look, thank you for the great work done here. Councillor Wills, sorry, you have questions for clarification behind your mask there? Sorry.
Question, am I allowed to say something without it being a question?
Certainly.
That is okay. I just want to say, thank you, Sue, and for your team. And I realise that to get to the number that we were looking for, everybody gets their pet projects thrown in the mix, and there's going to be unhappiness by all of us councillors for our individual projects that we support or encourage. And it's just the reality of getting to a number that's under 5%. So please take my appreciation for the fact you've got there. I realise that involves deferrals and other ways of doing things, but that's how businesses run when times are tough. So please pass that on to the rest of your team as well. I appreciate that you're in a difficult position because you go back to the building and you're sitting surrounded by other management and staff that are also trying to get their projects past you. So as our gatekeeper, and I'm pretty sure if Peter Wethy was here, he'd say the same, because I can't speak for him, that we really appreciate the difficult position you are personally in, where you're trying to protect our money at the same time as not become the most disliked person in the council. Bad choice of words, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Wills. Thank you. And just a closing statement from me here as well, Sue and Michaela, in exactly this space. It's extraordinary what you're achieving here. And there would be very few councils in New Zealand who have slashed their rates by 2.27%, which is what you're proposing to do here. We know that Auckland's rates are going up, for example. They're not being slashed by 2.27%. And so that's an extraordinary achievement, what we have here in these very, very challenging times. We have great confidence in the work that you're doing. It's really important for us as a trusted council to be taking the views of our community when they're saying, gosh, can we reduce the rates? That's being locked in here, and we're talking about that really constructively. And I come back to my point again, there would be very few councils in New Zealand who would be slashing their rates by 2.27% right now. So congratulations on the work here. Looking forward to the annual plan coming through for adoption in a couple of months. So thank you. Thank you. Right, we're at 10:30. Would everyone like to break for 10 minutes for morning tea? And then we will resume with our discussion about how to spend $16.1 million or not. Thank you. Sue Davidson, we're now going to start again with item 2 for this morning's briefing, which is the Better Off package that was discussed in the April briefing and has now come around at the request of the elected members for the May briefing. The reason that this item was delayed from the April briefing was a request from the elected members for extra information from me regarding the what the Communities for Local Democracy is doing in this space regarding the Better Off package and regarding Three Waters and seeking extra information. So here is my update on that before Sue commences with the rest of this item. Having been in contact with the Communities for Local Democracy, they are about to release to all of the councils who are members, which is, I'm going to say 32 councils. They're about to release a legal opinion about and advice for the member councils about the use of the Better Off package, and specifically about the clauses of concern where in the Better Off package it is, if you like, being talked about the access of DIA to our council staff, and also how councils cannot be critical of the Department of Internal Affairs nor of the government regarding the Three Waters reforms. So all of that advice is due to be coming to us within the next few days. It's going to be this week. There is an indication from which I've received, which is that the Communities for Local Democracy has found a way, if you like, with the proposed agreements for councils to be able to get the money with a clean conscience, if you like, and also retain their or uphold their concerns and issues at the same time. So we will wait and so I've seen nothing in writing here, but we will wait and see how that comes forward for us. The important thing for the elected members to be aware is that Communities for Local Democracy does not have the perspective of saying, leave this alone, don't touch the money. Okay, so so that's some interesting advice, okay, for us and a steer for us with our decision for today, and that is, if you like, the homework that you asked me to do and tasked me to do. Like I say, their advice isn't yet prepared, finalised, and to us yet. But most of the councils of New Zealand are meeting on this next week. We will be one of the earliest in the country to be having a discussion in this space. So I just say all that by way of introduction regarding the delay that we've had of 1 month that you requested. Okay, so we have an opportunity here and a responsibility to pick up from where we were a month ago, but of course noting as well in the political space, which is outside the work of Sue and her paper here. In the political space, of course, on last Friday, the government came out and said, we're absolutely proceeding now. The Three Waters reforms is going ahead. They've taken up the work of the working group and they are saying it's going ahead. So here's the madness of it, which is we can stamp our foot as much as we want about how much we may or may not like the Three Waters reforms, but it's frankly completely irrelevant right now because the government is doing this, whether we like it or not.
Point of order.
They're doing this. Sorry, councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, what is your point of order? What is your point of order?
You are misleading the public.
Sorry,
Have a democracy.
sorry, councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, I am not
It is
misleading.
open submission.
Sorry,
We are not in a dictatorship, and we, as politicians for our district, can protest. We can take a hikoi from Cape Reinga to Parliament. I will lead it. Will you? We can hold our assets in our district if we are strong and courageous.
so that's,
So please do not mislead the table.
sorry, councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, regarding your notion of this being a point of order, your point of order is rejected. Okay, because this is not, okay, because I'm misleading. The government is the government and they are doing this. Okay, I don't know where you were on Friday about the government saying that they're doing this, but maybe you missed all of that news and over the weekend. The important point is there are still bills to go before Parliament. There will be submission processes to the parliamentary bill. Those opportunities are ahead. Absolutely. People who have not been trespassed from Parliament will be able to go to Parliament.
Order, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. You are tacitly approving the illegal actions of our incumbent government by talking about trespassers that are blatantly illegal and undemocratic and belong in North Korea and not New Zealand. Point of order.
Sorry, your point of order, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, your point of order is rejected, councillor De Lavaris Woodcock. If we're going to go getting grand, you're going to be ejected from this meeting like you were from another recent one. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, given that this is a briefing, do standing orders apply and therefore the opportunity for making points of order?
Sorry, so thank you for that. So under the normal rules of this council, we don't use full official standing orders regarding questions and speeches. That is our protocol for this council. All right. So we normally behave at council briefings as gentlemen and gentlewomen, gentlefolk, all right, in a civilized manner. Standing orders can be brought in if order is not being upheld. And frankly, from my perspective as the chair, if there is nonsense that's going on and we're not getting on with the business of the day. All right, so what we don't do at briefings is make speeches. We provide direction to the staff. We're here to listen and to consider, but what we're not doing is making grand speeches from the pulpit like we do at council meetings. Okay, so the important thing is this: it is in the hands of the chair, how the conduct of the meeting takes place. And quite simply, if the order isn't being upheld, it needs to be upheld so that we can get through the work that we're here to do.
It's a sad day because actually one of the things on my mind to promote was actually at our briefings that they might be conducted in a less formal way, as could be given the example of that we address each other by our first names only, but it seems that I've misread that one particularly badly.
Sorry. So
Just making an observation.
thank you for your observation. Thank you. Councillor Wills, we do need to get to Sue and we need to move on with the work of this.
Anything else to do today? Thanks. We did ask for an update on what our participation in that group meant before we progressed onto the report that Sue's about to present, and I thank you for that. And in a discussion we had, the minister has indicated in the media releases that she has negotiated some of the things that you asked for in that forum that you were part of, but has there been any progress? Because one aspect which I wanted to touch on briefly, which is there was a condition in there that that we jeopardise taking the money if we continue to challenge the process. And could I ask you what your understanding is on that? Because that's we're talking about $16 million for the Kaipara district. At what point do we jeopardise that 16 million by our opposition?
So,
Please.
Are you ready?
thank you. So the, this will be the last question, sorry. In answer to your question, Councillor Wills, the advice that we're about to get from Communities for Local Democracy will talk exactly to your question, okay? And because they have an approach for how councils can navigate through that position of the objection to the Three Waters proposals, but also how to engage with the funding. Yeah, so, but what I'm saying is yes. What?
Discussion, but it feels, I mean, as a councillor, I feel that we're basically being blackmailed by the government to keep our mouths shut if we want the money.
Here.
But
Sorry, can we just have silence? Okay, because the public is not allowed to comment here. Thank you.
guidance from you.
Yes.
What we will be allowed as councillors to say on the subject, especially with local government elections coming up. It's without defeating the purpose of us still getting the $16 million, if that's what we choose to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you. So we have, as I say, legal opinion coming probably later this week, which is not a reason to delay the discussion we're having today. Okay. But the second point is that there is, I would say this, but this is based on other contracts that council has signed. There is a difference between council having a decided view and elected members having a view at a personal level. So no one, as far as I see, is personally gagged, but the council as a whole, which, and as we know, Kaipara District Council doesn't have a position here, that it may well be a very safe place to be, having a decision here. I'm aware that Sue's the chair.
Could you sit down?
Sorry, so actually, all right, so what we'll do, Sue, if you'll just sit back, please, over here in the desk, because everyone wants to have a political conversation. So Councillor Vincent, then Councillor Curnow, then Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do think the discussion today should be primarily about the list of possible projects, but it's a separate question about whether or not we accept the money. And I'm not sure if that is a decision or a viewpoint for today. However, I was wondering if there was a way through it all in terms of that other question, where as a council, we might say, yes, please, we want the money, say, and make no other comment about the reforms process, but that as individual elected members use whatever media sources might be at their disposal to express their views and seek the opinions of members of the community about, do we accept the bribe or shouldn't we?
So those pathways are absolutely open to everyone, and elected members are in that space anyway. So
that gives me some comfort. Thank you.
So Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Was there someone before me?
Councillor Curnow, sorry.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to remind my fellow councillors that I did send out the draft agreement that government had sent through, and there are two clauses which are of interest. 2.1, which is lifted exactly from the PGF contracts, which is that we won't bring the DIA into disrepute.
But who doesn't bring
the recipient must not at any time do anything that could reasonably be expected to have an adverse effect on the reputation, good standing or goodwill of the DIA or the New Zealand government. The recipient must keep DIA informed of any matter known to the recipient which could reasonably be expected to have such an effect. Now, that is exactly.
But that is the body corporate known as the Bugby District Council.
It is.
It's not
So,
the elected member.
yeah, so there's that. And then if you go on in the agreement, there's Schedule 2, which lists out the transition support arrangements, and it says the recipient will collaborate and cooperate with the DIA to provide for the implementation and carrying out of certain parts of the Three Waters Reform Programme. So again, the recipient, there is nothing in this agreement which ties the hands of individual members to speak whatever they feel is their truth. So just to be really clear, that is what the draft agreement says. And it is a draft agreement, so it hasn't been finalised. So there is opportunity for Communities for Local Democracy to make amendments to that in consultation with government. If we, and in order to accept the money, we would have to sign this agreement. So that's kind of down the road. The issue we have here, as we talked last time, is that we have a timeframe that the government is putting around this, that if we are to, should we decide that we want the money, we actually have to start now in order for our officers to be able to gather up the information, have the conversations that they need to have in order for us to even be in a position to possibly accept. And I would say if this process goes ahead, I will not be part of a council that does not accept $16 million for our community. I could not in all conscience stand here and say, yeah, I'm going to sit with these people who let $16 million disappear for our community. That would be unconscionable for me.
So you would resign, Councillor Kuno?
I would find it very, very difficult to be part of a council that would reject $16 million on a principle that which is on a fear which is unfounded. The agreement does not tie us to not speaking on this. It allows us as individuals to speak. It asks the council to cooperate, which is in the best interests of our staff, because for our staff who are going to, who work in the waters area, they won't have jobs when this happens along, unless we cooperate and help that process. And that happened in the Auckland amalgamation. Waitakere that fought ended up with its staff not transferring across as well as the others. So again, I don't want to do that to our staff.
So
I don't want to do it to our community. I don't want to do it to our staff. So I want to go down this process so at least we have the opportunity to get that money for our communities.
thank you.
If we don't go down this process now, we won't even have that opportunity.
Sorry, so when you're saying now, you're meaning now in the month of May because the applications must be in by the 30th of September. You're saying now because the work needs to be done and the thinking and the development so that here is a project plan for how to spend $16.1 million.
Because if there's anything that we would want to spend $16 million on that has not already been consulted on, then we would need to go and consult properly with our communities. So
and this leads us into Sue's presentation that she wants to do. But anyway, look, thank you for that statement, Councillor De Oliveira-Wilcock.
Yes, I'll begin my my questions. I'm not making.
Sorry. We haven't got to.
Okay.
So we're just absolutely in this kind of precursory, in principle space.
Okay, so we have the Bill of Rights Act 1990, which guarantees to all New Zealanders the freedom of expression, freedom of political belief, freedom from discrimination based on ethical belief, freedom of association, freedom of movement, the rights to refuse medical treatment, and so on. So nobody's going to shut me up. That's the first point.
What do you mean no one's going to shut you up?
The government is going to try, and if they would like to try and stop me or sue me for speaking out in writing or in person, let them try. Now, my next question is, Anna, Councillor Curnow.
Sorry, no, we're not interrogating each other.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
this isn't-
so I am surprised to hear a councillor sit around this table and discuss as more important the needs of staff over and above our rates payers. This represents the loss.
Sorry, councillor De La Varas, that's just, look, we're just not going to go down this ridiculous rabbit hole.
Okay, sorry.
I thank you. Can we, because Sue is here, we need to hear from Sue. We need to actually have a discussion about the Better Off Support Package. We're having here an in-principle discussion, okay?
Can I say my bit?
At the high level, okay? So that's where we need to go in interrogating each other. We don't do that.
The point is that if we take this money, which we haven't, on no point has Kaipara District Council consulted its community about Three Waters reform. And that is, in my position, that is a failure. We have not asked our community, other councils have. We need to ask them, should we take this money? If they say yes, we also need to ask them, how do we spend it? Because this bribe represents the loss of assets that our ratepayers, our community have paid for over generations that we own as public ownership of Kaipara District Council. Opanaki Road, Waiatawa Reservoir, 337,000 cubic metres of water. That is a treasure. That is our water security. That belongs to us, the people. We should not be having this discussion because we haven't asked our people what they want. And I will leave it there and let someone else contribute, but I have more to add later.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to Erin.
Well.
No, that's you wanting to move on, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to Sue Davidson. Thank you for the presentation. And you will, Sue, be able to explain exactly where we have gone to the community about what the community wants or doesn't want. Because my understanding is that in your paper that you have here, that the items, many of them have already been consulted upon, and some, of course, have not been consulted upon. So looking forward to your presentation here, Sue.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is the same report as last month. How do I get this to go?
I'll run it for you, sir.
Oh, you're going to run it for me. Great. Okay. So next page then, please. So this is the same report as last month, except that the only difference is that the conditions have now been received and we've all had a chance to look at those. So we have the criteria. So the purpose today is to find out what project or projects we should initially focus on. What the government has said is that or guidance from the minister has been that it's got to be large projects because that's what's manageable for them and for us, such as local parks, swimming pools, community centres, libraries, public transport or climate change. However, when you actually look at the priority initiatives and what they say is what their factors are for prioritisation, it's to do with wellbeing, it's to do, is it in your strategic plans? So there are plans, and the big items in our strategic plans are the libraries, and that's why they're at the top of the page, already on the page. Planning documents, the amount of and also they've got they've also now given us the timeline, saying that we have to apply by September. Guidance I'm wanting out of this meeting is basically what projects to focus on, but it's not a decision you're making. It's just to give me guidance so I can go out and do some we can do some consultation. The decision will be made when I bring a report back to council and you tell me to sign the contract for this. But it's to give a good indication of this is the process that will undertake is to have consultation with iwi and also look at what we need to do with the public. But obviously, if it's a huge consultation with the public, then we've got timeline constraints because the government have given us a date that we must apply for the funding. Okay, so and as I say, there'll be with the libraries, there's minimal consultation. So
I'll control it.
you're going to do it. Sorry, I'll just fix. No.
Just say, yeah, when you're ready to go to the next.
Okay, yeah, next one then, thanks. So so initially it's 16 million that we've been offered, and the first 4 million we could have from as soon as 1st of July, because you could start applying from the 1st of April. So, and the government have said they're prepared to pay 10%, and I'm not sure at the moment whether it's 10% of 16 million or 10% of the 4 million up front.
Sorry, councillor Will's question.
May I ask a question, please? But which the answer may actually speed this process up or it may not. Sorry, so thank you. The 16 million, you put in there the two libraries that we've discussed before as the main initial. Is there any robustness around those numbers? The reason I'm asking this question is that you put a lot of other options in, but if we've had experience with projects before, they've tended to come in over budget. So I'm asking a question like, is there any, what's your percentage as giving us this advice as to the fact that those two projects alone might use up all the 16 million? And therefore us having an hour-long debate about other priorities may not be necessary. That's why I'm asking this question now.
So, yes, so that they are only guidelines. However, using 4,000, I did go back and using $4,000 a square metre, which apparently is the build price at the moment.
That's for residential.
Well, this is what I've been given through the, 4,000 per square metre times 1,000 square metres, which is what we'd probably be building in both centres.
So is that through the libraries?
Yeah, that's the library. So that's how I've come to that. So there has been no.
Before we sit here and we get into a manual.
No, we haven't.
So
we get into design, all those sort of things, they won't, but you can cut your cloth to fit, obviously. It could be a square box or something with a bit more design. So that's.
Thank you for answering the question.
Okay, thank you. And so, but the detail of what, if you like, inside the question is the work that hasn't yet been done. So
just before we have a long-winded conversation about our priorities, I'm just asking how it might end up disappearing. If that's the two projects we chose, because they're so meaty, that could be 100% of that budget disappear on those two.
Correct.
Yes.
You would assume that those two projects would be 100% of the money. And everything else. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, question at this point in the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Sue, my question is the 4th bullet point. It says council to engage with Māori as to the use of this package. Why is that we are engaging with Māori but not the broader community?
Well, we already we've engaged with the broader community through our LTP, but it could be that, yes, depending on what project you choose, then there might have to be a consultation with the broader community. And depending on whether it's already in our LTP, depends on the lengths we have to go to. But that, as I say, that can.
So you saying.
Sorry, if I may also add, if I may also add, it is a specific requirement of this application that Māori, iwi, mana whenua are engaged with the projects and are supportive of whatever the projects are that the council is applying for, and that they're in at the ground floor of the discussions regarding what those projects, how those projects would work for the community. So it's absolutely a requirement here. It's not been in other places, but it is with this.
Okay, so would you agree then that as a council, for us to fulfil our democratic obligation, that if we are engaging with one sector of the community on how to spend this money, we need to engage with the whole community on how to spend this money, correct?
You're asking for an opinion, not for, so,
So, and that's a question there
Do you
is
agree?
governance-ish.
Mr. Mayor and our Chief Executive, do you agree that we need to ask the whole community rather than just one section of it?
Sorry, can we just ask that question a different way, which is, Sue, further down the line, if we provide direction for you today, how would you see engagement with the community on the direction the council is looking at? How would, or Mr. Maris, how would you see that engagement with the community over the next months taking place regarding all of the community here?
so depending whether it's in the, obviously we want to start with iwi, as soon as possible, because we want to get their input, because that's what we legally have to do. But obviously we have to do that as well if it's a bigger project that is not in our long-term plan. So, but if it's in our long-term, so depending on what the projects are, if it's in our long-term plan, there might be a slightly different type. We might not have to have hearings and things like that, whereas there might be.
Okay.
Depending on.
Okay, so.
Decide.
Mr. Maris and our Chief Executive, here's another question, and this is a really important one. Under the Local Government Act, these water assets are strategic assets. If we are going to change the ownership of those, as you know, we have a statutory obligation to consult with our community on them. So how is it that we can be only provisionally or in part consulting? We must consult with everybody under the Local Government Act. We are still bound by that statutory role. Please, will we acknowledge that?
So,
So it's a point of order, Councillor Wilson-Collins? Yeah?
yes, I feel like we're mixing up what we're actually discussing here.
Thank you. Yes.
We're talking about the options if we took the 16 million, whether we take the 16 million or not, and whether we're carrying on, and what we think about the three waters, I understand is a completely separate discussion. And I, for one, have very short on time today. I want to get through Sue's presentation, and I would appreciate it if we could all stick to the subject of the briefing for today. So we talk about, okay, for $16 million, we could spend it on this, and this. Sue, please go do that investigation. Other time where we can have our political discussions and say yes or no and grandstand and do what we need to do. Okay, so can we please?
Point of order, that is.
Stick to this.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins. So, look, I'm getting nods around the table here. So we're going to come back to. So your points are not wrong.
No, sorry.
Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock. What we're saying is that for us today, the moment that we're in is a different moment than the points that you're making.
Continue.
Remember that the government can change the Local Government Act today and wipe out the councils totally.
But they haven't.
No. So what they just.
We a council. We have a Local Government Act.
But they can. We are a creature of the statute of the government, created by the government. Sue, back to you, please.
Right, so we'll just go to the next page, which is about the criteria for funding, and that's been presented to you before, and it's basically the one that I've concentrated on tends to be the delivery of infrastructure and services that support local placemaking.
Gavin, can we go to the slide, please?
Oh. Yeah, so the one that I've concentrated on is the delivery of infrastructure and the services that support local placemaking and improvements in community being, because I think that's probably the simplest one to try and negotiate, and is doable in the time frame, and that's why I picked on projects. And they tend to be projects. How I've gathered them, I've gone to our community team, and they've picked up projects that have been in basically they've had advised to them. But we can't make the process bigger than Ben-Hur because we won't meet the timeline, and that's the issue here. We've had feedback, I know, just to acknowledge feedback from Councillor Worthy, who's already come back to me and said that In terms of the roading, he thinks we should wait, that the roading projects, bridges, that we should wait for Waka Kotahi to give their 61% rather than putting it up for a project. So if I got any more, I think the last page is just about the projects itself, more about projects. So yeah, if you go to your page 46 of and 47, you'll see the projects there.
Written agenda, thank you. So what you're saying is that, that we really can't go out there with a completely blue sky piece of thinking and make up a brand new idea, like that's not in any of our strategic documents or in any of our long-term plans, and say, this is how we would spend our $16.1 million without having it conceived and then consulted with our community and engaged, but in proper consultation with the community in those kind of spatial plan or infrastructure strategy or long-term plan kind of documents, because we wouldn't have enough time to do that blue sky thinking, which is why we have the list that's here.
That's right, and even, you're correct, and we can't go out and ask people what they want, because that's a huge, even bigger and then to process, that's an even bigger process. And we just won't make the timelines to be able to apply for the funding. And also do the work behind it to understand what the costs might be. So from a staff perspective, obviously we think the libraries are good. The two big projects that is in line with what the Minister has made statements on. Councillor Wethy has said he doesn't have a preference where we can get funding potentially in the future from Waka Kotahi, but it's open to the council to decide, what we put forward.
Yes, thank you. So regarding, if you like, the process from today, if we were to say to you, here is the direction of the council, please proceed in X direction. The process between now and it's returning to council for a full decision of the council, how long would you envisage that being, and what would you envisage being in that process of weeks and months between now and a decision by the council for the application?
I haven't looked at that, but what I'd say is we're dealing with iwi, so they would have to have some time, because it would be a matter of them going back to their hapu or and talking to them about what they want and what input they want in the future as well.
Yep.
For that, so that's going to take the time, but then there's also thinking of the community and how we bring them on board to what.
Exactly. So, Mr. Maris, so would we, for example, use the People's Panel possibly, or would there be other channels to, I'm going to use the word aerate, to discuss the ideas or the direction the council's working up here?
Yeah, so through you.
How would you do that?
So, I mean, we need to have this conversation first, which is why we're on the agenda again, because we need to understand the implications of the direction you provide to us, which is what Sue's been saying. If, for example, it's within the LTP, it's not a consultation requirement with the public, but it's an engagement requirement, taking the iwi out of it for the moment. It's how we would do that engagement. The People's Panel is a good option. We have over 1,000 members of that panel, which is a good cross-section of the community. But it's not the only way we do that, because obviously people are electronically challenged as well in the community. So we would use the traditional newspapers, all that sort of stuff, and feedback, maybe. We do need to see how that would play through, yeah. The only thing I would say is that the funding proposal submissions close on the 30th of September this year. So we do need to make sure that we schedule everything through and the required decision making to enable us to meet that time frame as well, including the engagement.
Including any engagement. Yeah. Thank you. That's helpful. for us. So it can't be blue sky. There is engagement with the whole community. There's deep, there's, if you like, in the rules of what government's setting here, we don't have to talk with the community, but we do have to talk with the Māori part of our community, mana whenua partners and so on. So that's crystal clear in that engagement space, but I just reiterate all of that about the framework that we're working within here. So yeah, we don't have full blue sky thinking. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification of Sue? Councillor Wills.
Yeah, thank you. With the PGF funding, we had timelines by which we had to spend the money. If that's put in place, what level of confidence will we have that if we take on a couple of big infrastructure projects as opposed to a new number of smaller ones, that will meet that timeline?
So through you, Your Worship, the timeline is there, it says we have to complete the projects by 2027. So if we chose 2 projects, then we'd have to make sure we had the right resource for project managers to manage those. And obviously the supply situation was resolved.
Because, sorry, thank you, because that's just one concern I've got, because we've just spent the last year, a couple of years going through PGF projects and the desperation to meet the timeframes rather than losing money. The other question I've got is, you've mentioned the consultation that we're going to start at the stage, once we've come to some agreement on where we're looking to go, that the cost of providing that consultation, will the government reimburse us for that, or does that become a cost that we accept and that we lose if it doesn't go ahead? Like with PGF funding, we were able to claim all of the costs from the get-go. Is that going to be the same?
No, it's not. And there is milestones that we have to specify. Things like when we have to have procurement completed by, when, and obviously there will be different stages for construction, because although they'll give 10% of the money up front, the rest of it will only be on seeing the results.
So can I answer the question? May I ask that in your, once we choose to decide if we do, that in your presentation in the future, that it provides those focuses on that where we're at risk at each stage, please? Because that could be quite significant when we're looking at $16 million in total. It's a risk for a small council if we're unable to meet those obligations in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor De La Varas-Wilcock.
Yes, so I've read the criteria of how the government has directed this funding to be spent. One of them is to be resilient to climate change. This district here, Dargaville, is every summer subject to drought water restrictions. Why is Dargaville the proposal for the Waitawa Reservoir pipeline that has been costed, not in here, as one of the uses of this to solve Dargaville's water security issues?
The government specified that no water-related projects could be on this list. They specified that Three Waters specified projects are not allowed.
It says that in the criteria, it says projects supporting communities to transition to a sustainable low emissions economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Including by building resilience.
Correct, but no Three Waters related projects are permitted on this list at this moment. And in this for the better off.
Securing water supply is considered
the Three Waters project. Yeah.
So can I just clarify? I haven't put any Three Waters projects. I'm not sure whether we are not supposed to or not, but I did put it on there because of the fact that I didn't think it was sensible to do Three Waters projects and then give those away.
Which is,
so you want to see
government did that.
Community want to see something else.
Yes. Aside from the Three Waters related.
It's assuming that if we go into entity A with one share
Oh, there's always political things.
They will sort, Doug, will
Yeah,
sort out.
absolutely, yeah, it's assuming all of that. But so this thing is for anything other than Three Waters projects that are in the criteria that Sue's put on the screen. Councillor Wilson Collins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure that I have a question, but I have some concerns and similar to what Councillor Wills has kind of already explained. I'm a bit burnt from the PGF process that we've been through, and the fact that you apply for funding at 1 year, and by the time you can actually spend that money, the costs have gone up and things have changed. So, I mean, I would absolutely adore and love that to do the library projects. That's such an amazing, they're both really amazing projects, but I'm just really concerned looking at the figures. Just looking at the table, projects to consider. We've got 6 million for Dargle and 8 million for Mangawhai. Are we suggesting that whole 16 million, that whole 6 and 8 million will be funded from the 16 million, or would it only be partly funded from the 16? Like, is there any lead?
So I think since I put this up, I've talked to our community services manager, GM, and she said that it's more likely that it'll be, we'll use the money, it will come to 16 million, because especially with refurbishment, that everything like that, so as well as the square metre being higher.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So that's where, for me, I kind of tense, because if we're thinking at 16 million now, by 2027, it might be 20 million. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just.
It's through your worship. So what we can do at that stage, if there is more, I mean, we had it in our LTP anyway, that we were going to have those two projects.
Yeah.
So it just means that, yes, we do have to pay for it ourselves. That's what we were doing without the 16 million.
Keep those ones in the LTP as a buffer?
No, we'll bring them back in when we need them. That when it looks like there is an issue, or we'll cut our cloth at that stage. That's what we'll do.
Okay. Thank you.
So the gift is still the gift, if you like, but councillor Curnow.
So just to tease that out a little bit, so if we did decide to go ahead down this road and we did find ourselves a bit short, you talked earlier about development contributions and loan funding, those would come back into the picture as opportunities here. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
There will still be, I'm still going to work through development contributions, because there's people that's paid development contributions, so they might still be there anyway. We might need them, but let's work through the costs, because I'm going to have to get better costings.
Yeah.
Thank you. So in principle level discussion, what is being attempted here is to get projects which, I think with my hand, sorry, which, if you like, would add up to $16 million or near, rather than saying, here's a $40 million project for which we will use the $16 million. Yeah, so we're not saying, our approach, sorry, is not to have a giant thing that this funding would be part of, but instead to be able, at an in-principle level, to be able to go, see all of that funding, it's in that and that. It's in these 12 bridges, it's in those 2 libraries, it's in these 6 town centre plans with all their beautification stuff. Yeah, it's that approach of doing work up to the value, rather than saying, here's a $50 million mega centre thing somewhere, say, and this is just some of the funding for it.
And through your worship, yes, so it's not part of a project, but also I'm looking at the number of balls that you want to have in the air, and we only want 2. We don't want to have, I mean, the PGF and MB has been great, but as you say, it has been a challenge.
Okay.
How many balls?
That's clear. Thank you, councillor Curnow. Councillor Wilson Collins.
A few technical questions around this. What are the GST implications of this? Because presumably, is the grant, does that count as income with the associated GST implications and then the spending has GST? So I'm just.
It'll sort itself out. So that's not a problem. We've worked with grants before.
So that's okay. And depreciation, see, these would then become two significant assets which would have to be depreciated and so would be a cost on the books.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's going to be a cost on the books.
And then there'd be insurance as well and repairs and maintenance.
Yeah, that'll be a long-term cost.
Yeah, so there are implications
Yes.
on the other side of the accounting lecture on that, okay. And
Thank you.
will those be brought through, and just teased out a little bit in.
Yes, we'll look at that.
Right.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins.
I don't know if this is the appropriate forum to ask this question, so shoot me down if you need to. But just on the back of Councillor Withy's email and the discussion about the trust for the Dargaville Library building, does that go off? But does that change the whole structure of how that building?
Oh, yes. If the council decides that that's what they want, then yes, that would, we wouldn't need to use the 250,000 to seeding for the library because we'd be receiving the money from central government.
Yep. Would we still explore the trust option? Or is it a discussion for another day? Or?
Well, the trust option was to get money to build a library. If we've already got money, this trust might be surplus to requirements.
It may not be needed. The purpose in the LTP was we didn't have the money
to
be able to build a library, but we had the idea. So let's put together a body that could go and gather the funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It says library and cultural centre, so would that still be, because when we were talking about the trust, earlier on, back when Jim Sefton was still here, it was sort of like discussed like it could be a library and a cafe and a performing arts centre and maybe like depending on how it was all going to come to fruition. But is that still sort of the idea or is it just a library now?
No, it's definitely got a cultural, obviously we want to have some cultural influence over it and but I think we have to look at what we can afford for the money.
Right, okay.
Which comes back to my earlier question about doing something mega with a bit of this. Councillor Vincent.
Might have been someone else before me? No?
No.
Okay, no, occurred to me that with the pursuing the library, library/community hub option for Mangawhai, it's being provided for partly through development contributions. So, and the amount of development contributions has presumably been set, allowing a portion to be contributed to that. So it would be kind of bad faith to the people who paid the development contributions not to use that portion of the funds collected for that purpose, which actually just provides some more headroom to ensure that that building could actually be completed within budget, including, because the 16 million won't be enough for those two buildings, I rather suspect. And that's where also with the trust thing, it may still be necessary. This is kind of a question, could you verify my thinking on that?
You are correct. So I obviously have to take some legal advice as to what we do with that. But yeah, it is a buffer in the meantime. And well now, because that's what the intention was, to get a library from Mangawhai, borrow some money and have part of it funded by development contributions. So we will look at that when we come to actually look at the pricing and what we can afford and what it's to build.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification from Sue? Sue.
Yes, so can I just add, because I did put in there, if we, it was in Councillor Withy's email about the office premises for Mangawhai staff. So if we are going to build a library, it makes sense to look at office premises. We're currently renting and looking at offsetting the rental with costs of premises, but that would be part of the investigation as well. That wouldn't be funded by government money, but we would look at that, and obviously it'd be funded by the rental we currently pay. So it's a possibility.
And just on that note, because it does get more complicated, the regional council told me on Friday the other day that the building across the shed council building that they're so pleased with, and those arrangements that they would be looking very favourably at repeating that for Mangawhai, shared council building for the two councils. So that would be an opportunity into the future to be further explored as well. That space, which could be different from a library, but that was news to me.
Thank you.
So are there any further questions for clarification from Sue?
Yeah,
Councillor De La Varcock.
just remind me again, Sue, please, why there's a $2 million difference in the proposal for library expenditure.
So initially, when I did this, which was, 6 or 7 weeks ago, the paper, I was looking at the potential that it might cost us money for land in Mangawhai. We still haven't worked through that process with the public. And that's something we have to go out to the public with.
The library strategy that we just had pointed out that there's 11,500 people requiring 100 this side of the Kaipara, which is double what Mangawhai has. And so Mangawhai also has 90% of reserve contributions to land. So why, I still don't understand.
So it's got to be a reserve. I'd have to look at, it's generally when you use financial contributions, it's got to be for reserve purposes. And I'm not sure that a building qualifies wholly for that. But in terms of the population figures, they were 2018. The difference isn't come to Mangawhai, Victoria. It's there's a lot of, the growth is horrendous.
11,500 people.
Yeah, in the surrounding district, and so I'd say they're more or less equal. That's my thought.
Not what the strategy said.
No, but the strategy was using 2018 population figures.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification of Sue at this point? No further questions, Sue. Thank you. So now, elected members, so we've got an interesting moment before us, which is that the officers are seeking direction from us here regarding this work. We've heard how we're actually within quite narrow rails about not being able to make things up, and also regarding the consultation requirements that are ahead, and regarding the relatively short time frame and documents already existing for pointing to where this money, how this money may be allocated. Now, the staff are simply seeking direction from us here. 100% of the emails that I have received as mayor on this subject since I put it into all of the Kaipara newspapers 2 weeks ago were get the money and spend it well. No one said leave the money away. Everyone said get the money and spend it and do it well. So the perspective.
Yeah, I think you're getting a little off the issue there.
Sorry, no. So I'm back at the first principle discussion here. So quite simply, that's the choosing, not the choice. But here we're actually trying to provide direction. So that was in the choosing part. Okay, so what I'm saying is I'm choosing that we lean into this rather than we avoid it. Okay, and my choice is that we go with the 2 library projects and that Sue and her team develop that up over the next months into what you would call a coherent plan that we can then see and really get our heads around, during which time, of course, the rest of the Three Waters stuff will have moved on further. But that's my direction here, and it would be interesting to hear the direction of each other elected member here. Again, we're not here to make a decision, but we're providing direction about the choosing and about what the choice may be. So, Councillor Wills.
Yeah, thank you. And I respect what Councillor Linton has said, that we stick to discussing how we'd like to see it allocated. And so rather than we get into political discussion at this stage. My personal opinion is that I'd like to see the list structured slightly differently in that, first of all, I support the two libraries, but I would like to see it structured slightly differently so we don't raise expectations and that if we choose to take those two as our lead projects, any additional smaller projects be identified as possible rather than in that list of projects. So we don't end up with a list of projects we'll be able to financially commit to, but community will have that expectation. So I would like to see design, if we support this, that the two libraries, and I'll get to this in a minute, be our focus, and then if there's sufficient funds left over, which will have to be worked in tandem, that the money can then be allocated to that. It's just a way of structuring it so that when you go out to the community, there's a realistic expectation of what we can actually do. I'd like to see that the two libraries, as they're called at the moment, and then the smaller projects be focused on any Kaparara or Kyneton, somewhere in those areas. As my direction, apart from the two libraries, I don't support any of the other projects currently put forward. I want the money to be focused on the community benefit, not council facilities. If we can add in tandem with our own resources, for example, officers, it should be specifically clear that that's coming from our own resources, not from this money, because we're giving up community assets for this money, and therefore we should be using this money back in community facilities, not to improve what we need as a council. I know we've got to get on with it, but I think with both Dargaville, with the loss of these buildings, and Mangawhai deserve community centres, and that's why I would like them to be defined more as community centres rather than libraries / cultural centres. And the reason I'm asking for that is I think both towns need centres. Dargaville, we're losing our centre, and Mangawhai doesn't have a centre, and no disrespect. And that community centre will then engage with things like Citizens Vice Bureau space there, or theatre groups, or community facilities, meeting rooms and things like that, that neither town currently have sufficient of. So it's slightly taking it outside the very specific definition of the library. And I use the Whangarei one as an example, and library, we've got the cafe, which might not suit, but it's a place where I know a lot of people have meetings and catch up, and that, so it becomes quite a gathering of people as opposed to just a place to go and get books. And I can see that working really successfully in both places. And so I just asked for that, to look at it in a bigger picture than straight a book lending facility. And I understand that, so that's my direction, is that, and yeah, we've got land in both places, so the potential is to spend the money on the buildings themselves as opposed to the land procurement. And my last piece of opinion is, don't penny pinch on it, because these are things that will be there for 30 years or 40 years. So please don't, if somebody says you $4,000 a square metre, don't design it with a 2.4 stud, because that's all we can afford. These are going to be something that the community is going to have to accept as compensation for what we've given up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow.
Yes, very much in agreement with Councillor Wills. I would like to see us focusing just on the two library projects. I think there is more than enough scope to spend 60 million in those two projects if we do it right. And I think we do, as Councillor Wills said, need to do it right. These are intergenerational assets that we're building. We're sitting in one that didn't go well, and we need to make sure that what we build is effective and fit for purpose for generations to come. So if we end up having to top up with development contributions, financial contributions, loan funding, then that is appropriate, I think, because these projects have been with us for a long time. We've just never, until now, had the realistic opportunity to actually achieve them. The LTP with the idea of the trust is a classic example of we really need to do this. We know we need to do this, but we really don't know how we're ever going to be able to afford to do this. Well, now we can, and so I think we should do it right. And I think you're reflecting on the library strategy is really helpful. It was embarrassing reading that document and realising how poorly we compare to the rest of New Zealand in the service that we're providing. That is not a comment on the staff and the efforts that they go to do everything they can with what they've got. It is a pure comment on the facilities that we've given them to work with. So to be able to do this right and to do it well is a huge opportunity. And I quite like a good deadline. So, having a time frame on it means we act as a council might have to do something quickly, which would be exciting and novel. So, so my opinion on it is those two libraries, we have two communities that desperately need those facilities, will need them for generations. Here is an opportunity that will never come again. So let's do those two.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, a lot of really good points have been raised already, and I do agree with a lot of what my fellow councillors have already said. These projects are very significant and very needed. They have been, we've had so many discussions about the Dargaville Library in particular, and it would be amazing to be able to do both projects. And I do want to reiterate what's been said, that they do need to be done to a standard. It can't be penny pinching if that's the track that we're going to go down. I also just want to remind about the cultural centre side of it and the other parts of the facility, so not just a library. And I really do feel we need to be making a big deal about these two projects and doing as much as we can for our communities with them, as has already been stated, so that they are proper community centres. So whether that means your cafes or your performing arts centre or whatever you're looking at there. But I just think it would be amazing. It really would be a silver lining to see something of significance for our communities in both parts of our district at the end of this. I'm still really concerned about the future, and I kind of see it as it's two big projects and nothing else. As far as the money will stretch, but if we were to do other things, if we were to do some smaller projects around it, I'd really like to see anything that can be done, all the savings that are made in our LTP because of this money. Anything that can be done in our lower socio-demographic areas that don't have, those socio-economic areas that don't have access to development contributions. We hear from those smaller communities so often. Te Kōpuru comes to mind, Tinupai, if there's anything that could improve their quality of life and their community spirit in places like that in our area. I think whether that's the 16 million itself or whether that's other savings in the LTP moving forward into the future. And I know that's a whole nother discussion for another day, but I just think perhaps there's an opportunity to provide some community facilities for those in our community who don't have that opportunity themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, and I know Mr. Maris will enjoy this, I have a real philosophical problem with providing direction, which has been tantamount to a decision of council at a briefing. However, I guess we have a quorum, so I'm going to hop in the swim. I've heard a definition of stress being looking into the future and not liking what you see. And as I look into the future, I see that the demise of the Kaipara District Council and it becoming part of the Northland District Council as a relatively conservative option that we could be encountering. And so when the tide's gone out, I'd like to see that there's something substantial left, and that would be those two library community hubs, or whatever. So I think that serves purpose in that respect, that it would be something that would endure, it would be visible, rather than frittering it away on multiple smaller projects, even though they might all be adding to community well-being in their own way. Actually, I have to take issue with Councillor Curnow on referring to the shock, shame and horror regarding the strategy. I think what was overlooked, and I missed that briefing, one of the factors that to me skewed the results was that if you were to look at the debt levels of those other councils that we were being compared with, we were far and away the most debt-ridden. So there is a relationship there between facilities that are available and how poor we are, how poor our economy is. So I just make that small point. But I do think that, I don't need to go over again the ground of that like previous speakers have made on that. And I would be more specific in terms of that short list of extra jobs that might be added. I would just pick the next two that were on the list, which is the Bailey's Beach extension, the car park, and Mangataroto Gorge Road footpath realigned. And as far as that Gorge Road footpath story goes, there's someone sitting in a rest home not very far away from here who would regard that as a real boost, given that he's no longer capable of using it, but he would, I think, get great satisfaction out of seeing something being done about that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor De La Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I'll start by reading Mayor Helen Warboy's comment. She's the chair for the Communities for Local Democracy, which has been fighting for New Zealanders to keep Three Waters assets in local government and in public ownership. And she says, for us to hand over millions of dollars of assets our communities have paid for in return for a single share of no real value is absolutely absurd.
This is a discussion for another day.
Great. My constituents.
Sorry, we were discussing the allocation of money, Mr Mayor, and
All right.
My constituents.
Thank you. Right, so please provide the direction, Councillor De La Woodcock.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay, direction, okay, because the rest of the meeting is frustrated here. Please provide the direction, thank you.
I am here for my constituents. My constituents have said,
sorry,
do not take the bribe.
That's not what we're discussing today.
$16 million, no, don't take the bribe. Hold on to our water, no bribes. So I, in all good faith for my community, cannot give direction on this and refuse to sully my role in the theft of our district's assets by giving direction, and I put it back to the Chief Executive to fully consult with our community of the Kaipara District on how they think we should spend the bribe money for the theft of their assets. And I please ask you to consult with them fully.
Sorry, well,
time by the 30th of September.
Thank you. The Chief Executive won't be doing anything of the kind regarding the political language that you have in your question, but as we've already heard, there will be engagement with the community about the direction that's being provided here. Thank you for providing yours, that you won't be providing direction. Okay.
My direction is not to take this bribe.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's clear. So as I said earlier, there's a choosing and then there's a choice.
And
the first of those questions regarding the choosing, you say that you won't be doing the choosing. So therefore there's no.
So you, Mr. Mayor, are saying, oh, I'm against Three Waters, but I'll take the bribe. That's like saying, I'll have my cake and eat it too. So where is the clear direction?
Sorry, we have provided the absolutely clear direction, working within the rules and the frameworks that have been provided to us. And that is what this council here has now provided direction, what I've heard is that the elected members here today, notwithstanding yourself who chooses not to choose at all the other elected members here today are saying, yes, proceed with developing the concept plans regarding the 2 libraries that have been indicated at the top of this report. There will be engagement with the community about that. There will be consultation with iwi about that. That is part of the journey ahead, and that is the choosing and the choice and the direction from the council here today. So I'm going to come to Mr. Maris now and say, Mr. Maris and Chief Executive Louise, is that what you've heard? Sue Davidson, is that what you've heard from us regarding direction?
Correct.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right. So I think that's clear for you. Thank you. So we're at 12 o'clock now. This brings us to the end of this item. Because the direction has been provided. So we adjourn at this point with the end of the open briefing, and we're at the end of the briefing for today. So thank you everyone for your attendance. The council elected members will resume at 12:30 with the workshop this afternoon, the second part of today. All right.